On July 14th this year, Reverend J. Atkinson spoke here, and he asked a question that caught my attention. He said, "What spark ignites a passion of yours?" And for me, music is the spark. The passion lies in creating a community to make music that none of us could make on our own. How did this come to be? Music was all around me in my very early life, even before birth. Do you remember 78 RPM records? Well, my parents had a large number, and they played them frequently. And so after I was born and in my early childhood, I learned the basic orchestral repertoire just from repeated listening. For most of my childhood, we lived next door to my father's parents in rural southern New Jersey. Grandfather taught me the elements of music. He would turn on the classical music radio station in Philadelphia and listen to whatever was playing, and he helped me hear and feel the difference between music in triple meter and duple meter, major keys, minor keys. And he would point out the instruments of the orchestra and tell me their names and what they sounded like, and so on. This lasted from when I was 5 until my older brothers grew up enough and they were old enough to capture his attention irretrievably. And that was about 3 years later. By then, however, I was well on my way. I had figured out the subtle differences between variations of duple and triple meter, how an English horn sounds different from an oboe, and I was singing and playing instruments thanks to the school program where I went to school. I grabbed for every opportunity that I could to make music. I had some piano lessons, but my teacher would not let me deviate from her chosen instruction series and play the music that I wanted to play, which was simple Bach tunes. And so I didn't stick with piano lessons. Unfortunately, I wish now I had, but I didn't. I could read music well enough to sing whatever I came across, and in high school I studied music theory. And I played the flute in the band, and I hung out with friends from the band, and at this time, my passion was the elements of music: pitch and contour, timbre, rhythm, meter, harmony. I didn't really pay much attention to the message. Off to college. This was a whole new world. I studied voice, I studied music history, and I sang in a chorus where we performed. It was an auditioned chorus for the first time in my life. We performed music from the Renaissance and other historical periods instead of the Broadway songs that we had done in high school. We worked on blending our voices, making pure vowel sounds, and emphasizing or de-emphasizing certain parts where there were dissonances or resolutions or unexpected harmonies. What a revelation it was to discover madrigals with word play, word painting, and double entendre. I began, the way the words music were written gave me all those insights. I began to understand that music was more than just the techniques of combining the elements. I met my husband when we were both in graduate school. He loved music too, and we sang together in choral groups and enjoyed it immensely. We married, and he got his dream job at that time, being a supervisor of freight train operations. However, he had a master's degree in transportation, so he was highly promotable, and that was the starting point. So we made interstate moves for his promotions 16 times in 15 years during the first part of his career. Music and Unitarian Universalist groups became my salvation during those years, and maybe his too. We always looked for a house near a UU church, hopefully with a choir. And we found a good choral group, too, everywhere we moved. We prioritized having a babysitter for rehearsals and performances, and we had some absolutely wonderful musical experiences. Really, that's what got us through the very long days of work for him and the very long days of infants and toddlers with no adult company for me. We never lived near family during that period, so we relied on music and UUs to provide the balance and relief that we needed. The refreshing effect of music for me was consistent and wonderful. I could be mentally, emotionally, even physically exhausted before a rehearsal, but afterwards I would come home invigorated and happy. I think it was music that kept me stable and able to function during those years of being at home with young children. And I wondered how people who didn't have the resources that I did ever managed. It was during that period that I first heard and grew to love the song Sometimes, as done by the Carpenters. Its message was just what I was feeling, and Brad will sing it for you now.
Sometimes, not often enough, we reflect upon the good things, and those thoughts always center around those we love. And I think about those people who mean so much to me, and for so many years have made me so very happy. And I count the times I have forgotten to say thank you, and just how much I love them. Sometimes, not often enough, we reflect upon the good things, and those thoughts always center around those we love. And I think about those people who mean so much to me, and for so many years have made me so very happy. And I count the times I have forgotten to say thank you, and just how much I love them.
Thank you, Brad. That was wonderful. My mother's mother and her sisters were the ones who played music in my experience, and they played piano. Aunt Julia was the last of the three sisters to die, and my mother asked me to sing at her service. She put words that she loved with a familiar hymn tune, and to me, when I sang, it felt as though I was singing for grandmother, who had died 8 years earlier, and whom I was very close to, and for all my family, at least as much as for Aunt Julia. This combination of words and music is personal and unique, and very special to me, and Brad will sing The Leaf Unfurling.
The leaf unfurling in the April air, the newborn child, the loving parent's care, these constant common miracles we share. Alleluia, alleluia. All life is one, a single branching tree. All pain a part of human misery. All happiness a gift to you and me. Alleluia, alleluia. The self-same bells for joy and sorrow ring. No one can know what the next hour will bring. We cry, we laugh, we mourn, and still we sing. Alleluia, alleluia.
Thank you. The words were written by the husband of a minister that my mother and father, at the church that my mother and father went to. And the tune, which is in the hymnal but not with those words, was written by the elderly Episcopal minister who married a not by blood aunt who was a favorite in my family. So I had a connection to both the words and the tune. Through both of these experiences, I moved beyond music as elements to music as a way to convey feelings. Emotion is a necessary component of music. Without emotion, music is mechanical, maybe soulless. You have to have the mechanics to make music beautiful, but you must have the feelings too, and they are probably more important. I began to wonder what it is that creates feeling in music. I was surprised to read of an interview where a musician who was also a writer asked the head of a well-known music school in the US, "When and how do you teach expressivity?" The answer was, they don't teach it. But most of the students pick it up anyway, somewhere along the way. I found that answer astonishing. Certain techniques can enhance the emotional content of music, and my experience has been that these are sometimes taught, but not necessarily with the understanding that that's why you're learning them. Eventually, I had to put it all together for myself, just as students in the conservatory do. Musicians have described conveying emotion in a performance as being in a flow state while performing the music and not worrying about the details. That's hard to achieve. Another element of music that I consider essential is the unexpected. This can occur in a number of ways. There can be surprising harmonies, rhythms, tempo changes, loudness or softness effects, silence where it's not expected, and so on. Some of these are put there by the composer, and some are added by the performer. But they are another element that adds interest and emotion to music. Playing music for me is a joy and a passion. When I play with friends, it is often wonderful fun, and I can spend hours at it. I do this several times a week with different groups, usually ranging anywhere from 3 to 6 people. depending on who can come and who's not out of town. Each of us plays our own part. We play to learn new music. Sometimes people are able to buy a new set, and we love that. Or to learn new parts of familiar music, or just to get better at playing together. These people are not necessarily people I would be friends with for any other reason, but we have music in common. When we play together, it's a gift, not only to ourselves, but to each other. We are giving our time and our attention, of course, but we are also giving musical passages to each other that play off of other parts throughout the piece and receiving them back in return. This interplay of parts and music is one of the best joys. We look up at each other as often as we can, because that helps the interplay stay together, of course. And we recognize that as the musical phrases pass between us, there are also feelings that pass between us, and sometimes unexpected effects that we can create on the spur of the moment as we play. That is a peak joy. Joy suffuses my mind and body and turns into love for the people, the music, and the whole experience of creating something together. What better way is there to spend time than experiencing and spreading love?